It's time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France with our very own Florence Villeminot.
Hey, Jeannie.
Hi, Flo. Today you are going to focus on the Salon de l'Agriculture. Now, that is a yearly annual fair focusing on farming, and it's actually one of the most popular cultural events here in Paris. It's been around since 1964.
The Salon de l'Agriculture. It's nicknamed France's biggest farm, and it is huge. It takes place just down the road from here at the Porte de Versailles. So every year you have a 9-day period where about 4,000 farm animals make their way to the French capital. We're talking about France's finest cows, horses, ducks, sheep, chicken, dogs, cats, you name it, they're on display. Now, there are all sorts of prizes at this fair. For instance, you have the general competition for animals. It's actually the biggest world competition for animals. It's kind of like the animal version of the Miss France contest.
Now, this fair is also a huge hit for kids. You can see some of them on those pictures behind you, particularly little Parisians who have no idea what life is like on a farm.
Well, what's so great about the Salon de l'Agriculture is it's kind of like this giant petting zoo. You can see these amazed little kids here. It's a great place for city parents to bring their kids and essentially introduce them to the wonderful life of farming. Now, what's interesting is it's a big hit for little kids and big kids as well. Let's take a listen.
The horns are huge. It's scary when you're right in front of it.
It's so cute.
She likes it when you scratch her on the head.
We're friends now.
We saw huge bulls and tiny little chicks hatching in the same place. It's great.
Now, I don't know what this says about me, but I actually prefer the food at the farm show to the animals.
Well, that's what's great about the Salon de l'Agriculture. It's this major food fair. It's a kind of a tour de France for your taste buds. A great opportunity to taste local delicacies from mainland France, but also the overseas territories as well. So you can taste things like wine, beer, cheese, cold cuts, foie gras, milk, and then some more exotic things as well.
I'm tasting a fruit punch from Martinique. It tastes delicious.
Do you like Roquefort cheese?
Yes,
Well, you're going to taste it in cotton candy.
I like it. It's sweet, and the Roquefort makes it taste strong.
I don't think I would like that Roquefort cotton candy. Well, anyway, on top of all of the farm animals, a big classic at the farm show are political animals, if you like. The Salon de l'Agriculture is a must for politicians, particularly in a year like this one when we have a presidential election.
It's an annual ritual, a must-do for politicians. They really don't want to miss this opportunity to be caught on camera cozying up to farm animals, but also farmers. It's a charm offensive, but that doesn't always go down well. And this actually leads us to our word du jour, amour vache. Now, amour vache, quite literally, can be translated as cow love, but it's an expression. It's a love affair where both partners are verbally and physically aggressive with each other, a brutal love, you might say, and sometimes this can be on display at the Salon de l'Agriculture. For instance, last year, when the president, François Hollande, visited the Salon de l'Agriculture, you can hear it and you can see it here. He was met with some serious whistling, or I guess you could say heckling, booing. Essentially, protesting farmers were really upset that he was visiting the fair, and they even destroyed the ministerial stand. So, amour vache on display there. Things weren't much better for his predecessor, Nicolas Sarkozy. One of the most memorable moments from his presidency came in 2008. This was the first time he was visiting the Salon as president, and he had a very unfortunate encounter that was caught on tape.
Ah non, pourquoi pas? Alors, casse-toi alors. Tu salis. Casse-toi alors, Merci.
That episode really marked Nicolas Sarkozy's presidency. Farmers saw him as the city boy, the bling-bling city boy who didn't really get them or what they were all about. And Sarkozy was such a stark contrast from his predecessor, Jacques Chirac, who, it must be said, was the superstar of the Salon de l'Agriculture. Just look at him working the crowd over the years. French farmers, I guess you could say, worshipped the ground he walked on. Now, it wasn't just because he was the Minister of the Agriculture in the 1970s. It's especially because he was responsible for reforming the EU's common agricultural policy. And that really made him into the farmer's darling. He would spend hours at the Salon de l'Agriculture tasting everything and soaking up the love.
Now, despite those public displays of affection, if you like, for French farmers, the French farming industry is in the middle of a major crisis, and it's a crisis that actually flares up time and again here.
Well, what's interesting is for centuries, France has been one of the most dominant agricultural centers in Europe, but the profession of farming is dying out. Currently, about 7% of the working force works in the agricultural industry, but that number is really dropping, and things are really tough for farmers. You have a fall in prices of milk, of grain, of meat, increased regulations, tough competition. A growing number of farmers are just struggling to survive, quite literally. A few years ago, a really shocking statistic came out, and that was the suicide rate amongst French farmers. It's 20% higher than among the rest of the French population. Essentially, about one farmer commits suicide every 2 days. Let's take a listen.
One day I got a phone call from the bank saying, "We're going to sell your farm." I put a rope around my neck. I didn't have a future, hope, or the will to live. Luckily, I didn't do it.
Our parents bought this herd, and we're going to sell it because at the end of the day, when you've paid for everything, there's no money left.
It's such a pity to be here. France is so beautiful, but we're losing it.
It's really sad and strange because French farming is going through such difficult times, and yet it holds such an important place in French people's hearts. There's even a very popular reality show here called L'amour est dans le pré, which is about matchmaking between French farmers.
There really is this romantic myth surrounding the French farmer. There's a lot of nostalgia for a time when French people worked the land, were close to nature. A lot of French people feel like that is really part of our heritage here in France. And in a way, that's why the Salon de lAgriculture is so popular. A lot of people go there to channel that kind of myth of the French farmer, but it really is in such a stark contrast with the harsh reality of French farming today.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Florence Villeminot, for that look at France's Salon de lAgriculture. Don't forget, if you want a closer look at anything else, that we can always check out our Facebook page, or you can tweet Florence Villeminot at Flo Villeminot.